If you grew up with an absent parent, emotionally unavailable parent, or a parent that just couldn't meet your needs, there's a good chance that those wounds did not just disappear when you became an adult. In fact, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that becomes the fuel, the drive, the ambition, that need to have to prove something. But the problem is when attachment wounds drive business, they can quietly shape how you lead, how you show up, and how you measure your worth. So today, I'm going to talk about why entrepreneurs with parent wounds often work so hard and what's actually happening underneath that drive. As a therapist, I work with a lot of identity, trauma, and attachment patterns. And one of the things that comes up over and over and over again, especially with the high performers and the entrepreneurs, is this. Many of them have grown up with parents who have been unavailable in some sort of way. So that may be an absence that might look like a physical absence or emotional distance, a constant criticism, or even that subtle invalidation. And what many people don't realize is that those experiences become the ones that shape how we attach, perform, and seek validations when we become adults, especially in business. First, let me touch on something super important. There is no perfect parent. But because of that, this means every single one of us has something to deconstruct from our upbringing. Sometimes parents try to provide certain things, but unintentionally neglected other needs. A parent and child are at different stages of life and are individuals, which means their perceived needs are going to be different. So for example, a parent might provide financially, right, paying for a house, food, clothing, but can't provide a shoulder to lean on when a child is sad about not getting a cookie for breakfast. Or they may physically be present but unable to connect through play because they are cleaning, cooking, or taking care of a sibling. And when a child has a need that goes unmet, that need doesn't just disappear. Here's something that I teach clients all the time. If a need is truly a need, it's gonna stay a need until it's satisfied. Here's the example I like to give. I like to compare it to food because essentially we all understand food. And food is a necessity. If you don't have access to food in the moment, your body isn't going to stop being hungry just because you don't have access to food. You still need it. And you learn how to survive without it, and you're learning how to build your tolerance for going without it until it becomes available. So attachment kind of works the same way. If a child is needing validation, comfort, attention, encouragement, and emotional safety, and that need has gone unmet, the need doesn't just disappear. We just learn how to live without it. And later in life, we start finding creative ways to seek out that need so that it can be met. Parental wounds don't always come from what seems to be the obvious, but sometimes it can come from the really subtle absences. So for example, a parent may be physically absent. Maybe they're gone due to work, divorce, death, or even neglect. Sometimes they were physically home, but maybe their presence is unavailable because maybe they're in another room and you can't access them. There are then experiences, however, when a parent is physically present, but emotionally they're not present and they're unavailable. This is where a parent is not able to attune to a child's emotional needs, and they may use phrasing like, "You're fine, stop crying, stop being so sensitive, shake it off." Those emotional responses may seem small, but to a child, they can feel incredibly invalidating. Over time, the child is going to learn that my emotions just are too much for people and that it may be an inconvenience for others. And so in order to maintain the relationship, I have to then just suppress my feelings or not talk about them. Now, here is where this is going to connect to entrepreneurship. You may often feel these wounds most strongly during moments of perceived rejection. This could be moments of criticism, bad reviews, losing clients, or even a dip in sales. Even when trying something new, the outcome is still uncertain because every time something goes wrong, the brain may be interpreting it as confirmation of an old belief, like I'm not good enough or I have to prove myself. That may eventually drive behaviors such as chasing certifications, overworking, over accommodating clients or customers, constantly changing business ideas, over obsessing over social media engagement, and not because you are weak, but because you're trying to soothe an old attachment wound. So here's the hard part. When you chase validation through achievements, there actually is no finish line. The bar just keeps moving. You get the certification, but then you need another one. You reach a milestone, but then you raise the standard again. The goal isn't actually the achievement. The goal is trying to soothe the belief that's underneath it. And if that belief is something like, I'm not good enough, then even positive feedback can feel like it's not quite enough. It becomes a never-ending loop of more success, more proof, more validation. One of the biggest misconceptions about parental wounds is that people think it only applies to these really extreme cases of abuse. So physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even severe neglect. But many attachment wounds come from moments that adults later dismiss as small. So this may be things like a parent saying no to something that mattered to you really deeply, a parent throwing away a drawing you were really proud of, or a parent looking down at their phone when you just scored a winning shot. As adults, we develop logic and compassion for those moments, but the child's emotional needs still existed, and sometimes it's never really fully acknowledged, not even by ourselves. So parent relationships also shape identity. So same gender parents often influence how we see ourselves in the world. Opposite gender parents often influence what we expect in relationships. And when that parent is absent, people sometimes feel like they're missing a model for how they're supposed to show up, how they're supposed to relate to others, and even how they're supposed to have that internal trust within themselves. Some people overcorrect and try to become the opposite of their parent. Others unknowingly start to repeat the same patterns because, well, it's all that they learned. So if you're an entrepreneur and you notice yourself feeling deeply affected by criticism, rejection, approval, validation, it may not be all about the business. Sometimes business becomes the place where old attachment wounds try to heal themselves. And awareness of that can be incredibly powerful, because when you understand what's driving the behavior, you can actually then have control to shift it. So I want to leave you with one reflection question. What was something that felt really, really important to you as a child that others may have dismissed as something small? And how did that shape the way that you see yourself today? If this topic resonates with you, let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in more conversations about attachment, identity, and entrepreneurship, make sure you subscribe because there will be more videos.